Good morning, good afternoon, but it's actually good evening, depending on what time you're watching this. This is our first online presentation. I hope it's going to work because it will save hours for me in the classroom and something that you can then watch at home. But it's only going to work if you learn from it. So hopefully give me some feedback once you've completed this. It was good for you, it was bad for you, you'd rather be in a classroom or you'd rather be watching these presentations. So this is for two types of staff. Yes, for repatriation staff who go all over Europe to collect patients, but also for PTS staff and anyone in between who do long distance transfers. Some of this presentation covers Europe, I'm afraid. And if you are only going to stay in the UK doing PTS shifts, but you want to do long ones, just bear with me. You might learn something anyway, might learn something that'd be an advantage to you. But it's very different looking after a patient who's going to be on board for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, compared to somebody who's in your care for 4 or 5 hours. There are a lot more considerations. There are a lot more things you need to do with the patient, things that you need to check on. So this is what this whole presentation is going to cover. It's going to make you a better medic at the end of the day. And if we're going to improve your care and improve what you're going to consider on a long distance journey, then this is why we're doing this training. Okay, so let's crack on. So this slide is a repat one. Obviously, we normally have on repatriations FREC 4 pluses and above, or blue light drivers, and we do put FREC 3s on them sometimes, but clearly they're not clinical lead on them. So we'll put a FREC 3 sometimes with a minimum FREC 4 plus on board, depending on the patient's needs. So So I just worked out it jitters each slide, so it saves my recording for each slide. So when the slide moves on, the recording moves on. Okay, are you ready to hit the road? So European people, you obviously must have a passport in date. You must have enough stamp space left on your passport pages. If you do these regularly, you will soon fill up a standard passport. If you're planning on doing lots of repatriations and your passport's coming up for renewal, I would definitely be paying the extra, I don't know what it is, 10 quid to get a few extra pages in there, because you will fill up a passport very quickly. Pardon me, I'm drinking fizzy at the same time as presenting, not the best move. GHIC card, formerly EHIC, European Healthcare Insurance Card. This is if you get sick abroad. I've done this for 8 years and I've never needed hospital, but I've felt really poorly at least 3 times. Luckily, 2 of the 3 was driving out there, and like I could just crash on the stretcher in the back with my seatbelts on, and I always put my full harness on. Actually, it makes me feel safe. And once on the way back. So it does happen. You're eating foreign foods that might not agree with you. So now you can get a bug from the patient. But anyway, if the worst was to happen, make sure you've got your GHIC card. You apply for them online, government website, just search in if you haven't got one. GHIC card, even if you're not doing any repats and you're going on holiday, you should still have a GHIC card. So we only want good drivers to do long distance. That's the simple crutch of it. And we know whether you're a good or bad driver by your Cortex statistics. We try to congratulate our best drivers and train our worst drivers. And we will let you know if you are in the top 50% of drivers, especially, and this is really important, especially for European transfers, because you are driving a huge amount of time and the risks are too great if you're not a top 50% driver. We do like you to have experience driving in Europe, or quite frankly driving the other side of the road. You don't normally get the wrong side of the road in a pickle, just because the way the roads are built. Motorway driving is very, very easy. You've just obviously got to remember that the slow lane is now on your right, not on your left. And you don't want to be hogging the middle lane, or hogging the fast lane when you're thinking you're in the slow lane, but you're in the fast lane. In France, the motorists will soon tell you all about it, because they're very impatient, especially France. So experience, and I put on there, I don't mean popping over to Carrefour for some cheese and beer. I'd like people to have driven in America or in Europe, just to get that confidence up. You don't want to be really learning in an ambulance with a patient on board. That's not the time to learn. News 2. They used to do a free online certificate for the News 2, but I think that's been taken down. You must understand News 2. Even our Freck Frees, who are doing PTS journeys, should be able to do a basic set of observations, and put those observations in a scoring system. That's the best way to describe it if you don't know what News 2 is. It's a scoring system, and it tells you a score which gives you the information: is my patient okay? Are they little sick? Are they big sick? But the most important thing with News 2, which is why we use it, is because yes, we'll know really whether, or we should know whether we've got a sick patient, big sick, little sick, but it tells us whether our patient is staying the same, getting better, or deteriorating. And it's that deterioration which would then hopefully cause an alarm bell trigger, or unless you know why they've deteriorated. Has their blood pressure dropped? Have they kind of gone asleep? Is their heart rate starting to increase? Is their breathing rate starting to increase? So News 2, I want you all to be able to understand it. There's lots of great videos online. Just type in News 2 training and on YouTube, and you'll get the gist of what I'm trying to say. But you must have a thorough understanding of it. It's no good having a bit. Anyone at BM who can teach you it, if you just ask anyone in the office, and it only takes 5 minutes. But start with a YouTube video if you're unsure, or if you haven't done it for a while, because it's always good to recap. Be very flexible. That is so important for us, because there are times when the plan is to, let's say, a 2-day repat, drive out to France, bed down for the night, collect a patient in the morning, come back. You've driven 12 hours down to the south of France, go to collect a patient, there's something wrong. New infection, doctor don't really want them leaving today. What we're not going to do is fly you home, or make you drive home. You will be put in a hotel again for that night, and then hopefully collect a patient the next day. What my point is if you're planning on being back Monday morning at 8, and you have to be back Monday morning at 8, don't book on the repat, because you might be back Monday night at 8, 12 hours later than planned. We can never guarantee what's going to happen, and you must have that flexibility. Very European based, but actually even PTS based, this one. I'm just going to read it from the screen. When you and everyone around you is tired, that you can still be patient focused, team focused, and not grumpy. Now, if you're grumpy, you're going to make your crewmate grumpy. If you're both grumpy, that's going to feed off to the patient. That's unacceptable. The patient's the priority. You must be motivated. Pardon me. You must be motivated even at 3 o'clock in the morning, because it's not fair on the patient. So if you get hangry, make sure you've got food with you. If you get tired and you're driving, make sure you're swapping with your crewmate. There are things you put in place. So I'm going to give you my example. 3 a.m. is my example. Driving back from Europe, um, I've I've normally done during the day the bulk of the driving. Then in the evening I'm with the patient. Then I'll swap back to driving. And normally about 3 a.m. It's called the graveyard shift, isn't it? We all get tired. We all hit that brick wall. So I pull into the petrol station, hopefully on my next fill up with diesel. I fill up with diesel. I buy a pack of their pre-packed ham. I buy a few fizzy sweets, and I'll sit there and eat my ham, give me a bit of protein, have some water or drink, and then choose some Haribo on the way, and it works a treat. I might put a little audio book on, quiet if the patient's asleep, or a little bit of music, very quiet again, not to disturb the patient. Again, this is if I'm driving, I need to keep awake. So make sure you've got measures in place that if you do get hangry or grumpy or tired, that you can manage it and deal with it. Again, repats only, or especially overnights. This is one bag in the ambulance. Don't be packing your whole contents of your house. There's no room for it, and it's not fair because the patient may have lots of luggage too. And not be a fussy eater. Mainly Europe again, you are eating from service stations, from the Flexi Plus lounge. Seldom do you get a hot meal traveling out, and the only hot meal coming back normally in Europe is a Mackie D's, depending on your route. So you may be living on sandwiches for 2 days, and if you're whatever, you just have to think that your food is normally going to come from a petrol station. Be familiar with the truck. Know what kit is on it. There is nothing worse than I don't know if you can see my video. I'm going to just try to move it. No, it seems to be stuck there. You may see the bottom bit, but on my screen, my video is covering some text. So be familiar with your truck and know what's on it. There is nothing worse than patients looking a little bit side nose around the lips. I wonder what his oxygen saturations are. I know what we'll do. We'll get the pulse ox out, have a look. Oh, have we got a pulse ox? Did you check a pulse ox? We ain't got a pulse ox. I don't know. Is there one in the cupboard? All this have to be done before you go. You cannot be 3 hours down the road and not have the right equipment with you or know how to use it. You may have found the pulse ox. You may have checked it off in the morning. Are the batteries good in it? Did you turn it on? Did you test it? So be familiar with what is on your truck, know how to use it, and check it before you leave. In Europe, there's breakdown equipment on board, emergency triangles. There's gloves on board, as in warm gloves for if you have to put snow chains on. There's snow chains. There's a snow shovel, high-vis jackets. That's law to wear. And it's also here, I've put down here, what is the requirement if you break down on a French motorway? Well, you're going to turn around and say, we're going to call the office. We can't do anything. If you've broken down on a French motorway, even our European breakdown assistance will not cover you. And the reason it won't cover you is because French motorways are privately owned, which means you have to go to one of the orange phones on the road, call them, and they speak zero English. And I'm talking from experience now. I've had to call them, had a tyre blowout 2-3 years ago, totally ruined. I couldn't find the jack in the ambulance, so we had to get somebody out to lift up the ambulance so we could change the wheel, or I could change the wheel. You need to know all this stuff. So ambulance and VDI check, just what I was saying to you about before, about the pulse ox. It must work. You must check the batteries, and as I say, that's one piece of equipment. You must check it all. Have you got enough stuff for that patient? Have you read about the patient? Okay, another scenario. You've got one sheet in your ambulance, one blanket, and you've got one patient. The patient has a diarrhea or vomiting incident. The blanket's covered in stuff, and so is their sheet. What are you going to change them on? Are you going to leave them on it? So you get to the hospital and you fill up your sheets and blankets. There is nothing more irritating than me getting on an ambulance, going to the sheets and blankets cupboard, and it's empty. Am I the only one who seems to get sheets and blankets for the patient? Every single ward have got cupboards full of them. And this is one example of many. So read about the patient, make sure you've got enough stuff for them, okay, on board. Enough pillow, sheets, blanket, and maybe the air mattress too if it's a very long journey. Is the ambulance good to go? This is really important. Never ever take one of our trucks on if it's got a yellow light on, meaning a warning light, on a long distance job, or any ambulance with a slight fault, because after long distance that slight fault becomes a big fault, and then we're breaking the ambulance. Then you're stuck up in Scotland with a vehicle that can't come back, it's not drivable, you've arrived Saturday night, no one's open on a Sunday. So can you see the predicament? Never take an ambulance, because they only get worse on long journeys. So make sure the driver has thoroughly checked the vehicle and the clinician in the back has thoroughly done the contents check, the equipment check, and be thorough with it. We can be quite doolally sometimes. Some of you are really good, mark every piece of something which may be missing from there and write it on the form, but be diligent and check, because it is your responsibility, okay? So repat ambulances do have less equipment on board than all the other vehicles, and that is to keep the weight down. We know what a patient who is going from one hospital to another, we know that they don't need a scoop. I think there is a scoop on one of them. We know they don't need a wheelchair. We know that they're not going to need leg splints or a burns kit or a maternity pack. The list is large for what is not on there. But again, over the 8-9 years, there's probably a lot of equipment which you wouldn't even consider which is on there, because there's been an instance where I've needed it and I thought, oh my god, we didn't have it, and I'll make sure we've got it for the next one. Stupid example: socks, hospital gowns, pajamas, all those little details, mouth cleaner, swabs, cream for the lips, because we'll cover this later in patient care. What I'm saying is the repat ambulances 118, 119 and 120 are designed for Europe for long distance, so the equipment on them is very different. Okay, so yes, so one of my patients, it was the first patient we collected from a house in Spain, because all the time I've been doing them, I think I've been doing them for a year and a half, 2 years, and I've been collecting them from a hospital. And this particular patient had discharged, I think, or they were from home. I can't remember the exact case. Got there in Spain, got to the house, got upstairs. She was a bedbound patient, and we had no way to get her into the ambulance. We had no carry chair. We couldn't get the stretcher upstairs. There was no lift, and it was horrific. We had to find a very strong chair, and it was proper strong, which we could sit her on, and 4 of us gently carried her down the stairs to the ambulance. So not as safe as we'd have liked it. We didn't have the right equipment, and I tell you what, it's never happened since, because now there is, I believe, carry chairs on every repat ambulance. But again, if you're collecting from a house, you've got to consider, I might need a carry chair. Is there a carry chair in there? All those little bits like that. All this planning and consideration needs to happen before you leave. Okay. Yeah, all past mistakes we learn from, and it makes us slicker what we do. So sorry PTS staff, this is a European slide. we are now going to take you on your journey. You have checked over the ambulance, all the kit is on there, you've got all your documents, you're ready to go, the tunnel's booked. Let's take you on the journey to the tunnel. So we generally book Flexi Plus tickets. Now what Flexi Plus means is it doesn't matter what time you rock up at Eurotunnel. I don't know why I keep looking at myself. I don't know what time it doesn't matter what time you rock up at Eurotunnel, you will be on the next train. In other words, you can pick when you cross, and there's the flexibility of plus or minus 4 or 5 days. So again, if a patient was delayed by a day, we wouldn't lose out on the ticket. So Flexi, just think of the colour purple. Flexi is purple. If it's purple, purple lane, purple barrier, purple entrance, then you're in the Flexi section. And it's the right hand entrance, it's the right hand lane when you get to the tunnel. So stay right. Once you're going to go to the booth, it should read your number plate. It will read your number plate, hopefully, match it to the bookings number plate, print out a ticket. Once you've got the ticket, stick it onto the window, the barrier open, you drive through the barrier and stay right. All the traffic go left, which is why I'm telling you to stay right. If you go left, you go on a big detour all the way round, so you can stop at the duty-free shop, and trust me, it's not cheap. It's not any cheaper than bloody supermarket here. Don't get anyway, and then you go back to the passport control, where if you stay right, you skip all that and you're straight into passport control. Passports, you do the UK passport, then you go 10-20 meters more, then you hit the French passport. Once you've gone past the French passport, that's the Flexi lane there. Once you've gone past the French passport, legally, I believe, you're in France, even though you're still in Folkestone, because France control that part of the tunnel. Anything was to happen there, the French police would be responding, not the British police. Now, once you've gone through passport control, you come to the best part for the cruise, the Flexi Plus lounge. But be diligent again, because if your train is leaving in 5 minutes and you go into the lounge, you're going to miss the train and you're going to be waiting in the queue maybe another 90 minutes. So plan again, look at the train times before you leave, make sure you allow enough time for the passport control. Some days you can be at passport control for half an hour. I've been there an hour and a half before, just trying to get through passport control. So if time allows, pop into the Flexi Plus lounge. They'll give you a bag on entering, fill it up with what you want. Food and drink for the journey, I've put on there 1 bag max. That's because you used to get the bags yourself, and people used to take 2 or 3 bags out. But now they've cottoned on that people are a bit greedy, so they hand you 1 bag as you walk in. But if you've got a patient on board, ask for a second bag for the patient in the ambulance, and make sure you get them some food, drink, some yogurt, some soft food. Think of the patient. Teeth may not be great. They're not going to want to gnaw on a French stick with 1 tooth. So think of soft foods. They've got some great yogurts in there, some soft fruit. They've normally got little packets of fruit, maybe a little bit of chocolate, which is a little bit of good energy, a bit of sugar. Check they're not diabetic. Little things like that, you must consider it. They may ask you for a coffee at 10 o'clock at night. Give them a caffeine-free coffee. Don't be giving them caffeine when you're going to be looking at them at 12 o'clock at night thinking, why are you wide awake? But you poured them a coffee with caffeine in 2 hours earlier, and they could be a cardiac patient, and caffeine can really affect the heart. So just, there is so much to consider. I'm digressing here. So this is the tunnel. After you've gone into the lounge, you get back into the ambulance, and this will be the view as you're driving up the road past the tunnel there. Not the tunnel, the lounge. So I just wanted to give you a couple of pictures just so you can identify where the lounge is and what lanes you go in. There are two aisles, the tunnel, low vehicles, and they'll go on the double deck, so there'll be a car above a car, and there'll be the high vehicles which go on a singular deck. Clearly we're a high vehicle, so you stay left and look for the height restriction sign. There is one that says about 2 something meters. Trust me, we don't fit under it. Our light bar will tell you we don't fit under it. We've already replaced one. So stay left under the high lane and go into the high vehicle lane when you go down the lane. They will ask you a million times, have you got a patient on board? So no patient on board, no patient on board, you will say until you're sick to the back teeth of saying I've got no patient on board. Now when I see them walk up to me, I'm just shaking my head like that, and hopefully they do get the gist before they get to the window. So when you drive on the train, this is the train. Anyone who's not been on a train on the tunnel before, this is the view. Now if you look at the bottom of the picture, this is the join. I don't know how long this train is. It's massively long if you're the first one on there. When you go over the join in the train and you go at the speed they recommend, which is I think 10 miles an hour, the ambulance will be going. So I'm a little bit naughty. I drive at about 15 miles an hour. I break the speed limit. No one's going to tell me off. Not too fast. But what that does by going that little bit faster is the vehicle seems to glide over the joins in the train, and it makes it so smooth. And remember, it's all about patient comfort. Do I want the patient on the stretch going boom, 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 boom 20 times getting down the train, or do I want him to glide down it? So that's why I do it. Again, just learning through experience, through doing it so many times. It's far smoother on the ambulance and the patient. Now you're going to park up. They're going to knock on your window and say, hello, window down, handbrake on, into gear. They're the 3 things they ask you. Window down for the air pressure, in gear to stop the handbrake failing, and handbrake on. Get out of the vehicle, one of you, and walk round to the back where the ramp will come down. What I now need you to think about is there's a fire on board, and we now have to evacuate the patient. If you've got a car up your arse, how are you going to open the back doors and get the stretcher down? This is why they actually ask you if you've got a patient on board, because they must give you space behind to get the ramp down, stretcher out so we can get out of the tunnel. Do not think we'll never have a fire on board, because there's the fire on the tunnel. It's already happened in the Channel Tunnel. It was a freight train, it wasn't a passenger train, but it caused absolute devastation. Now, I've been driving automatics for the last bugger knows how many years. When I jump into a manual, I'm in all sorts of trouble for the first 5 minutes because I'm just not used to manual vehicles anymore. And one of the things I will forget is if they're in gear or not. I often forget to check because obviously in an automatic you always start and it's not in gear. My message to you here is, if you've parked the ambulance in gear and you're only literally 6 inches away from the front of the ambulance to the back of the car in front of you, and you start it in gear, you're going straight in their arse. Probably not the best term. You're going to ram them. That sounded even worse. So take it out of gear. Now, if you are like me again, and you may forget this step, put a glove over the gear stick. That'll be the ding, 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 ding. I must remember to remove it. Don't be spending £750 on damage and you haven't even left the UK. That is not a good look. Happy with the train. Okay, so now you've arrived in France. You're going to drive on the right. You'll struggle to get it wrong because the roads make you drive on the right. You can't literally go wrong. on a motorway system. So this is what I always say. It's really easy to drive in France on the right. You won't get it wrong until you get to your hotel at night. And it does go wrong. And it's gone wrong for me. And it's gone wrong for the person where I've been sitting down. Because what happens is, we've all seen the McDonald's advert when we want the breakfast because we're still sleepy, we're not quite awake, the brain hasn't whirled up. You will pull out of the hotel and you'll be driving on the left side because it's what you've always done all your life. So that's the time it will go wrong. And it's that very first bit of the morning when your crewmate will shout, "Oh, whoa, get on the right, get on the right." So, yeah. So, both of you, crewmate and driver, be aware, be on the right hand side. Be aware, sorry, as you're pulling out of the hotel first thing in the morning. Europe is no different to the UK. If you get a speeding ticket, we will still get that ticket in the post. It's a little bit more in France, the fine. And depending on how much you've sped percent speed over in Spain, you will pay a percentage. So the faster you, the more speed over the speed limit, the bigger the fine in Spain. I quite like that system. So don't think you are not going to get a ticket. You still will. However, those people that like Waze, where they tell you where the speed cameras are, that will not work in France. It is illegal for sat navs to tell you there are speed cameras in France. France want to catch you. They don't want you to be known there's a speed camera there. They want it to be a complete surprise to you. Makes sense in a way. But here's the thing. If you use Waze, it will say police car ahead. Now, you can't put that on a sat nav. And what the Wazers do is the speed cameras, they mark as police because Waze will tell you that there's police. So if you hear on Waze as you're driving, police reported a mile down the road, you know there's a speed camera. Tip of the day. 130 kilometers is about 80 something, 82 I believe, 81, 130. This is the speed limit on most of French motorways. Now, I think it's a good speed limit because the roads are in good shape and the traffic on them is not as mad as it would be on the M25. It would be dangerous on British roads. We'd crash far too much. But the French motorways, as I say, they're excellent condition and they are built for that little bit more speed, like the autobahns in Germany. But for us, we don't want to be going 130 because if you do 130, the diesel gauge will be going because the RPM is so much higher. So 75 is about your optimum speed, which is right for, yes, you are going a little bit faster, pardon me, but you will save more fuel and friendlier on the environment. So, and friendlier on the engine and the environment. Remember, the countries are a lot hotter, there's a lot more heat. The aircon will be working hard, so that'll be more demanding on the engine. So just be really mindful. You don't want to sit there with your foot to the floor. And plus, we'll see it on Cortex. In France, it is law to reduce your speed when it's raining. And the other tip of the day is if you're driving a cruise control vehicle, when it starts raining, take it off cruise control. Because if a wheel starts to slip or hit aquaplane, it will continue and it will mess you right up. So when it's raining and there's lots of puddles about, take it off cruise control. I said earlier, French drivers, they are so impatient. I was having this conversation the other day. Every country, their driving style is very different. Germany are they're bloody good drivers in Germany, but they're fast. French are still good drivers, but they've got no patience whatsoever. The tiniest of mistakes, they'll be honking the horn and flicking you the bird. So especially this is where you definitely want to keep in the slow lane. Italians are mad. I could go through every country. Spanish, you're always watching them drift from one lane to another. They've got their phone in their hands. There's not one Spanish repat I've done where I haven't seen an HGV on its side in a motorway where it's gone off because either the driver's fell asleep or he's had his mobile phone. And when you see them all veering down the road like that, and I kind of get past them quick, and you look up, they're on the phone. They've got no respect, and these are professional drivers in Spain, which is the concern. So with this in mind, going back to your scores on Cortex, keep your distance. And why I say it's linked to your scores on Cortex is people with the worst scores have normally got the bad braking index. If you're braking hard, that means you're not reading the road. It means you're too close to the vehicle in front. The moment they hit their brakes, you're going to plough into the back of them, so you hit your brakes harder. That tells me you're not reading the road. So throughout the whole of your long distance, this is applicable to any driver. Keep your distance. When I was a kid, learned to drive, the only advert on telly for driving was "Only a fool breaks the 2-second rule." I've not seen that advert on telly for years. I should change it to 3 seconds, I think. So 2 seconds between you and the car in front. And why it's seconds and not distance is because the faster you get, the more distance needed. As you get slower, you can... I'm doing this the wrong way. You can decrease the distance. Everything's reverse. Right, 2 second rule. Buys you time if they or you mess up. Okay, and that's how you got to think of it. It's time. As we said, we've done it on the Cortex. So this is the other thing is as well. If you've had a bad drive and you have been all over the shop and you are braking hard and your driving is poor, might not be in your mind, but it will be in your crewmate's mind. Trust me, we will be the next people to find out, because I'd like to think your crewmate will be telling us, and will either be pulling you off for another assessment, looking at your scores and looking at ways for you to improve. Let's move on. Oh, that's the sign, by the way, on the motorways to say to you, you can go 130, but when it rains, drop it down to 110, which is about 70. I think 110, 69, 70. Tolls and tags, péage or péage, however you want to pronounce it. These are the devices which will pay for the use on the private road. In each ambulance, we have 2 tags, one for France and one for Spain. There is a typical toll barrier. Just imagine Dartford Crossing, what it was like before the barriers come out. This is not a great photo, but the bottom left picture where it's got the white pug going through it, I think it is. These are half of the barriers in France have got the 2-meter height restriction, so only cars can go in there. They are normally on the left. Don't look at the big picture, because on the left of your big picture is the oncoming traffic. But normally the left 2 lanes are reserved for cars, and they've normally put the height barrier down. We won't fit under there, trust me. The HGV lanes, the slow lanes, are the best lanes to use, because HGVs do not want to stop. The amount of kinetic energy they need to get going again is really bad for them to stop and start at every toll. So they've thought about this, and they've put these lanes on where they go into the toll. It detects the beep, the tag. By the time you've driven to the barrier, the barrier should have opened, so the truck don't need to stop. Now there are more and more of these lanes available, but the truck lanes, trust me, are the best for this. Yeah, fine. So the Spanish tag will work in Portugal. You've got Via T, which is the Spanish one, and I don't even know, I can never pronounce it. I always say Vinci, but it's not. It's Vinci, I think, who is the French one. Happy with that? Okay. You need to know a little bit of law change, driving law change in Britain, in Europe, than in the UK. And one of those is let's do what we know in the UK. If you're on the M20 in the slow lane and there's a slip road coming in, the people on the slip road have to give way to you. Now, it's etiquette or manners that if you're seeing a car coming down the slip road, we'd move over to the middle lane to create that space. That's the UK system. In Europe, well, actually in France, but I would say a lot of Europe, the people on the slip road have the right of way. They can come down that slip road and pull out into you, and they're in the right, you're in the wrong, because they have the right of way. They have priority. So these three signs on there is saying to you, be aware of the priority is different. Well, it's not priority different, but they have priority from the right. Okay. Be careful, they will tell you if you hear a vehicle horn, you have probably done something wrong. Because I say, the French will tell you they are so. Diesel! Our diesel bill is horrific. And our diesel bill in Europe even more so, because diesel in Europe costs a fortune. Now, some of these pumps, I've got to a pump and I've been scratching my head and I've had to ask myself, which one am I putting in? Now, the second picture down, it's pretty obvious. Diesel are the two on the left, unleaded are the two on the right. But some places, they may not have a black pump. A lot of petrol stations in France, I say a lot, is changing. They're getting rid of the economy fuels because they only want you burning clean emissions. So they're getting rid of economy fuels. Now, if you looked at the Repsol pump above and you took out the economy one, you're going to get rid of the black pump and the blue pump. So you're going to go to a pump and you're going to see green and yellow. Well, we would naturally assume green would be unleaded, so you're safe with yellow to be diesel. But you won't see signs saying unleaded and diesel either, because these are bloody European and they used E5, E10, E85 for petrol, and diesel is just classed now as B7, B10. Don't worry about the XTL. If you look closely at the middle picture, I don't know if I've put it on here. No, if you look closely at the middle picture, oh yeah, I did put it on there. The black pump on the left has got two D's and the black pump on the right has got a D. And the letters B7, so it's telling you it's a diesel grade, is in a square. So, you know, it's almost you're going to need a translation book soon just to buy some fuel. So be mindful of what you're getting. Your rule of thumb would be use the nozzle that looks the most worn, because it's going to be the economy grade, if they've got economy grade. And diesel, so black or yellow. Okay, I'll just read my notes here. I'll put on there that some stations only do sell the rocket fuel, the most expensive fuel. I've told you why. Now, here is the thing. So many people come back and say, oh, they didn't take DKV in France. Trust me, they take DKV. What you've done, there's a lot of pay at pumps in France, and a lot of pay at pumps, total, the fuel station total is the worst. You'll put your DKV card in and it will say card not accepted. Because you have to take the DKV card into the petrol station, give it to the person, and they will say, litres, that was my best French, by the way. How many litres? They're asking you, how many litres do you intend to fill up with? I don't know how many litres. It doesn't matter. Say 100. So they will authorise the card for 100 litres and start the pump. They'll give you the card back. Your transaction is over. You go and fill up with 86 litres, put the pump back, and only charge 86. It's like a credit card pre-authorization. It say the card is good for 100 litres, but you're only being charged 86. And that's a lot of petrol stations in France. If they don't, the DKV card works in every petrol station in France, but it don't work on every petrol station in Spain. Only Repsol. Repsol, again, look at the top right picture. That's the Repsol logo. That's the only station we fill up in Spain. But whilst that might sound a drama llama, Repsol is about 50% of the petrol stations in Spain. So you've got amazing coverage. Okay, filling up, cleaning the windscreen. Now, anyone as old as me will recall when we were children, you would get back from a day out, or your dad would, because I was a kid, driving, and your windscreen would be full of bugs. Now, our hedgerows, our country life has been turned and ruined. We now have houses instead of countryside. And our insect population is now minuscule, so getting a bug on your windscreen driving is a rarity. However, in Europe, there's still plenty of countryside, plenty of hedgerows, and bug life is massive, like it was when we were children. So if you drive from here to Spain, at least twice on that journey, or actually every time you fill up with petrol or diesel, you need to clean the windscreen. Now, many of you have never cleaned bugs off a windscreen, and I'm going to trust me when I tell you this. There is a trick to it. We would naturally, each pump has a spongy, one of them spongy, squeegee, spongy things on a big stick. And what the natural reaction for us all to do is to dip it in the water and go up and down the windscreen like this till it's clear. You will be there for 10 minutes doing it. This is what you do. In the water, wet the screen with it once. Just wet it. Leave it. Let it soak. Do what you want to do. Empty your rubbish while someone's filling up. Get rid of all your rubbish. After a minute, Bob's going in to pay. Now get your squeegee again, go over the windscreen once, all the bugs will come off. Bugs are spot welded to the windscreen. They need to soak to come off. You can scrub them all you want if you want to, fill your boots. But tip of the day, wet them, leave them, they'll just fly off. They won't physically fly off. That's it. Happy with that screen. Let's move on. Okay, weather abroad. Weather is insane, quite frankly. You always get extremes abroad. Now, what I mean by extremes is, if it's a windy day, it's really windy. If it's raining, it's really raining hard. You don't just get normal rain or a normal bit of wind, or it's never hot, it's boiling. I don't like the heat. So you do get extreme weather abroad. There's parts of France you will go to which are very flat and coastal. Montpellier is the biggest example I can give you. Driving past Montpellier, I think I've put it on here, I have gone from lane 1 to lane 4 with one gust of wind. That is scary because it's really windy. If you know you're going in a windy zone, or you can start to feel the vehicle shaking, as in with the wind, make sure you've got both hands on the steering wheel. You are not cool driving with one hand on the steering wheel and one hand on the gear stick or your leg. It is not cool. One gust of wind can take you out. Be the good driver and put both hands on. My driving instructor told me once, if you don't know what to do, Mr. Pickers, with the other hand, the steering wheel is always the best place to start. Weren't he right? Okay. Set your heater. First thing to do with the patient on board, turn your heater on. Even in Spain when it's hot. People think I'm mad. I've done videos about this. The heaters in the back are thermostatically controlled. So if you set it to 22 degrees and it's on all day and night, it's only going to start heating the back of the cab up when it gets 22 or below. Why is this important? I've put it on here. Because people, staff, you, me, normally think, here's the scenario, normally think, it's a bit chilly in here. I reckon the patient's cold, we'll stick the heater on because the temperature drops. You're too late. If you're thinking you're cold now and you're going to put the heater on, the patient's probably bloody freezing. And not all patients have capacity. So are we taking good care of them? Are we considering this? You need to consider their body temperature before your body temperature. So by setting the heater at 22, turning it on, it will come on when the temperature dips automatically. Win-win. Aircon. So I've explained a bit about the heater. Now let's go about aircon. Aircon, think of air going through something and it's getting cooler as it goes through it. Now, if you drive air at 1,000,000 miles an hour through a tube to cool down, it's not going to cool down very well because it's going way too fast. If you have slow air going through this cooling tube, it's going to come out really cold because it's had time to have the cooling effect of hitting it all. And I want to say radiation, but it isn't radiation. The transfer of heat. So the key to this is, if you want really cold air and it's really hot for the patient, turn it down in the front so you can have more in the back. Don't be selfish and having you vent on I'm really cold because I get really hot. Make sure you have cold air on you, of course, but the patient's always the priority. We don't want you to have all the cold air and the patient to have none. So turn your fan in the front onto one, has to be onto one for the aircon to work, and then that way the people in the back can have it and they can direct the vents to the patient if they are. But most patients, some patients like cold air on them, some patients can't stand it. I've mentioned already in the previous slide about aquaplaning. Turn off your cruise control and don't be in extreme rain. All the drivers, I have no idea why, whether they're taught to do it, they all drive with the hazard lights on. So hard rains comes down and the whole motorway put the hazard lights on. It's like, well, if you can't see the hazard light, I don't get the point of it, to be honest. If you're only going to see them with a hazard light, but that might be, it's just how they're trained, I guess, because we don't do it in the UK, so I guess I shouldn't knock it. It's their way of doing it. There is something I've missed off this presentation, which I've just thought about, is roundabouts in Spain. Third exit, we would normally in the UK take the inside lane, go round and then exit out in lane 2. I hope you understand that. So we would, on a third exit, we hug the inside of the roundabout, go round, and we indicate off and take the exit. In Spain, as you go to take the exit, they can come on the inside of you and keep going round. So we would hit the horn and say, they're cutting us up. They're not cutting us up. That's how they're taught to drive. It's crazy. It's dangerous, but it's the Spanish system and how the Spanish drive. Don't ask me why. So I think the only thing I can tell you on here is be super mindful on roundabouts in Spain. I have nearly come across some more than I can count. Trust me, on a roundabout. So, if you're unsure, just sit on the inside lane, not the outside lane. Hopefully that's covered weather. We'll move on. Oh no, we haven't covered weather yet. Consider your crew. Yeah, okay. So this is about. I've done some uncomfortable repats with a crew people before, and when I mean uncomfortable, I don't mean uncomfortable talking, uncomfortable environment. I mean uncomfortable as in I've been really cold sometimes. I always say people I always ask my crewmate, whoever I'm working with, are you a hottie or are you a coldie? Do you like the heat or do you like the cold? There's nothing worse on a long distance repat than one of you being a hottie, one of you being a coldie. Because one of you want the heating on full, one of you want the aircon on full. And you have to find that happy balance. Now, I've always said it is the driver who should take priority because they have to stay awake, they have to stay alert. So even if you're going to Spain, you might want to consider taking a coat, because if he's a coldie and he wants the aircon on at 2 o'clock in the morning when there's ice on the window inside, and trust me, I've been with that crewmate, I will put my coat on, I'll put up on my, whatever I've got to stay warm, um, and do it. But as I said, once you get into the driver's seat, you do have a bit of a say. But drivers should take priority, and it's finding that balance with you and your crewmate. If you like the heat and he like the cold, maybe keeping it in the middle, and you both should be happy. That should cover weather. No, still don't cover weather. That was taken in Europe from not so long back. Extreme rain. Okay, this is my biggest fear. Um, is breaking down abroad, or having an accident abroad, or an accident far away from the office where we can't come and support you. And this is why you need to be in the top 50% of driving statistics. It's all to do with risk, and how do you balance that risk? How do you not balance it, minimize that risk? So we use good drivers. That's how we minimize the risk. And we use well-maintained ambulances, serviced every 12 weeks, inspected and checked every 12 weeks. You'll never go out with bald tyres, with dodgy brakes, with stuff not working. It will not happen. So well-maintained ambulances. In Europe, we have European breakdown cover. Remember I told you it doesn't work on French motorways. You have to go to the orange phones. Call the office as well if you break down abroad. Get your high-vis jacket on. I say get your warning triangle out. That's law to have a warning triangle. Do you know what? If I was parked on the side of the road with traffic whizzing by me, I'll be putting the blue lights on. If they don't see a blue light, they're certainly not going to see a warning triangle. We should have, or we're trying to have, emergency crew on standby. So we had 3 repats the other day. Technically, we should have known in the office if one of these go a little bit pear-shaped, as in one of the vehicles had a issue. We would had to have dispatched another one from the office. So we have that as a consideration if someone breaks down, who we're going to send out. So in the UK, none of our vehicles have jacks with them, because you might know how to change a tyre, but if you was to change a tyre and the tyre was to fly off and kill somebody, I would be standing in the dock with them saying, why did you use somebody who wasn't a mechanic to change your tyre? So to get over that legislation, none of you can change tyres on unless you're abroad. So and that's clearly, you can see why. Again, it's down to risk and mitigating risk. So you're 3 o'clock in the morning, you've broken down, you can't get hold of RAC. I say you're broken down, your tyre's blown, you can't get hold of RAC. The safest thing to do is to safely change your tyre. You must know how to change a tyre. Know where the jack is. Know how to lower the tyre from underneath the ambulance. Do you know where the little spout is in the ambulance to lower the tyre? Do you know where the jack has to go underneath? Do you know what part of the vehicle it goes under? Do you know to loosen the wheel nuts before you jack it up? Do you know to make sure the handbrake's off? You must know how to do it safely. I am happy for anybody to come up to me and say, I don't know how to change a tyre. Oh, that's music to my ears, because I can show you and you can learn. And once you've learned, we're all good. The people who are problematic for us are the people who have no idea, but they like to say they've got, but they keep having no idea, but not say so. Anything you don't know, you ask. I happily tell you. It's going to take a few minutes to show you, then you've got the knowledge. Don't sit there saying that you know and you don't, okay? Because we'll happily teach you. Yeah, use your emergency lights. Call us. or call me. I think 99.9% of staff should have my mobile number. RAC will be key to helping. We have got a repatriation policy. Please read it. We are creating a long distance PTS one. I don't know if that's out by the time you get to see this, but please read that. Okay, now I'm going to test your knowledge. What is the picture on the screen? The clue is in the title. What does it mean when you hear them? So hopefully you've said rumble strips. And why are these so important for drivers and crewmates? They are so important because this is your first indication to let you know, as the driver and as a crewmate, that the driver is getting tired. The moment I'm in the back and I hear a rumble strip, hopefully the next word out the driver's mouth is, I'm starting to get tired, so I'm going to pull over when it's safe to do so, and can we swap? That's what I want them to say. If they don't say it, I will be saying, right, next stop, pull over. Rumble strips are great. They are your trigger to know someone's getting tired. Do we allow drivers to drive tired? Absolutely not. That's why all long distances must have 2 drivers on board. And you may well have driven a long distance on your own and been alright, but you know what? Our bodies change daily. Our diet has a big influence on how we feel, the amount of sleep we had the night before, how, if we've got a little bit of an infection, sniffly nose, we may not perform how we always performed. Human factors. And it's recognizing this. So any long distance journey must have 2 drivers on. If you are with a non-driver and you're doing a long distance, you need to be letting the office know. It's really important. When I'm talking long distance, I'm not talking 2-3 hours, okay? I'm talking a long distance. But you must have 2 drivers on board. Rumble strips will save your life, and they will save the patient's life and the driver's life, because someone is telling you someone's tired. Listen to them, act on them. Enough said. What's up? Oh, please work. Okay, it's not going to work. I put, again, for all you mature citizens watching this, I put on there the YouTube clip of the Budweiser advert, which was great. It was about, I don't know, do you know what, I'm showing my age now, 5-10 years ago, when everyone was going, what's up, what's up? It was a fantastic advert. It was to remind you, crewmate and driver, how important WhatsApp is. Now, if any of you remember, go on to BM Ambulance, go on to Google reviews and look at our reviews. And you will see a trend in every single one of the reviews for a repat. It's like, oh, yeah, got me dad, nana, granddad back home, thanks very much. But they kept in contact with us. They showed us where the ambulance was. People get more excited about this WhatsApp group that we create as an office, because when you're on board and you've got the WhatsApp and you're the member, you're sharing the live location of the ambulance. They go on to you, oh my God, he's just coming off the E27. He's now in Holland. He's just crossed the border. They're at the petrol station. They can see it all. You're not telling them. The WhatsApp group is revolutionary. So, key to all communication. It's normally the officer that will set it up, but you must set a live location and set it for 8 hours. And as I said, at any point they can see. You must remember to turn it off. Now, we are aware that it's going to use a tiniest bit of your data. So we've kind of come up with the fact that we will be getting some BM phones, but probably I bet you could drive to here in Spain and back again, and I bet you in data it will cost you about 5p. So it's never been a big concern of mine. I would rather just give you the 5p. I don't know what it will cost, but it doesn't use. It uses very little data, because it's on over the internet. So there's 2 reviews put on there, but yeah, it's all about the data. It's all about the WhatsApp, sorry. So it's such a key to make sure you integrate with them. There are some rules. Obviously, once you've handed over the patient either at the hospital or at the office for the onward crew, turn your live location off. They don't want to watch you be going home. Never put in the group questions about, oh, do you know this medication or this medication? That's not their family's job. That's a question for us. Normally, most times you go abroad, we set up 2 groups. We have a family group, which is the pink and fluffy group. Dad's drinking well, he's eating well, he's now asleep, he's had his meds, he's smiling. If they'd like to see a picture and Dad, you can do a little picture. They do like a little picture. That's the pink and fluffy group. And there's the office group, which is, right, Bob's going to meet you at the office, he's your onward crew, the hospital's accepted the patient, you're going to take him into ED. So that's your information group of us. The family are not involved with that group. So 2 WhatsApp groups. Don't get them around a muddle. We normally would put the picture of an ambulance as the group picture for the family. Okay. Hey everybody, I'm back. I had to suddenly go to bed because I had to suddenly be up at 4 a.m. the next day. So I'm back another day. Change of outfit, get rid of the tea towel. Right, okay, so I've just watched all the previous slides just so I caught up with where I am. So now we're talking about security. And this is going back to our risk assessment. If in some areas we get broken into, we know some areas are going to be more prone for breaking in than others. Some parts of France, a lot of the lay-bys can be, if you're like in a lay-by, and we know Paris is horrific for breaking in. Most city centres in France don't have a great reputation. So you may be overnighting in a place where security is a big concern. If a side window of a Renault gets smashed, and I'm talking a cab side window, possibly or hopefully the next day we can get a new pane of glass put in there. If one of the rear windows of the ambulance gets smashed, we're buggered. And the reason is they're specialist glass. They don't keep these. It's not a Renault part, it's an ambulance part. We had one smash in the UK and it took minimum 5 days to get this bit of glass, and actually we had to drive to London to get it. It was that drastic. So back to the risk assessment, it's all about risks and managing those risks, or I should say minimizing those risks. So there's a picture of a truss truck being broken into. No idea what they took, but it's now off the road because there's glass everywhere and it needs a piece of a new pane of glass. So minimizing that risk. So we try to, when we book a hotel, we look for a hotel with parking. That's really important. That's one of the office things we do, is we normally, when we're looking for hotels, it's with parking available. And if you stay at a hotel in a city centre and it has got parking and it is a dodgy city centre, it's normally a CCTV. Now, I would rather pay £10–15 for overnight parking in a secure area than risk being broken into in a dodgy area by having paid no money at all. So that's something that we do in the office. Some hotels I've parked right outside the door. So you're looking at the hotel and my ambulance is there. Some of them are happy with that. Oh, we've got an ambulance outside, we feel a little bit safe and secure. Others can't stand it, they want you to park away from the building. Again, that's fine but try to see if you can park outside close. Say you've got a lot of money's worth of equipment on board. Don't park at any dodgy off-road places. Park under CCTV and park under well-lit areas. Overnight, you must take out the cardiac monitor. That's the most easiest thing to steal. And the drugs. Thieves like drugs. Hide the sat-nav out of sight. Take it off the window. Put it in the side pocket of the ambulance. And close all the blinds. Now, if you're a thief, hopefully you're not, but if you was a thief and you're going to break into a vehicle to steal something, you're going to have a torch, and the first thing you're going to do is look through the glass to see what can I pinch. If all the blinds are down in the back and they can't see anything, they're probably not going to risk it, because they're going to think, well, what am I going to risk getting caught for nothing? So then they'll look in the front of the ambulance. There's no blinds in the front, and you don't want to see anything where they want to break in for. So make sure it doesn't look attractive to break into the ambulance overnight. Okay, credit card. So we do have one card. If you're popping to France and back, you won't need this card. This is generally for long distance repatriations again, where sometimes when we book a hotel room on booking, depending on the hotel, and we don't get to choose this until we've checked out actually, so it's almost too far down the process of the booking stage to choose this. Sometimes we pay booking direct for the accommodation, and we give them our card and they charge our card, and then you're fine in your hotel. Other times you're still putting your credit card on the system, but that's as a guarantee, and they expect the money when you get to the hotel. Now, there has been some occasions where crews have rocked up, we've paid for it, or we thought we paid for it, but it didn't go through because all they've took as a security deposit. So I think some we've paid over the phone, and some the crews have paid and we've just refunded them, or put the money in their bank, or refunded them when they got back. Just put it on your week's wages. So we will always reimburse you. But the credit card is only for accommodation and an evening meal and emergencies. Everything else is your responsibility. We do not pay for you to stop at services and grab a coffee. We give you a coffee machine in the back instead. There's water on board. You hopefully should have got enough snacks, food and drink from the tunnel. And anything you do buy which would be chargeable to us, you must have a receipt for. We must have that document for that transaction. Our government wants to see that we've paid out £40 and here's the receipt. If not, they won't allow it in our tax return, if that makes sense. So we got the card and everybody was stopping at the petrol station buying coffees for themselves. I'm not paying for coffees. I've bought you a coffee machine to use. Because you know what, some service stations you can pay £4 or £5 for a coffee, and 2 coffees every however long. I mean, it soon adds up. So we don't pay anything other than digs and an evening meal. This is for overnights, obviously. Plan the bloody route. So many crews have gone over, and I've said to the crews, whatever you do, don't go nowhere near Paris. And what do? They get on the train, program the sat-nav, and the sat-nav say, let's go through the centre of Paris. This will add 2, 3, 4, 5 hours onto your journey. The sat nav's going to take the most direct route. It hasn't keyed into traffic unless you've Bluetoothed it on, and sometimes Waze or Google will also take you through the centre of France. Trust me, centre of France, centre of Paris. I'm going to tell you why you don't want to go through the centre of Paris. Imagine London 5 times worse, 5 times more traffic and a bit bigger, and it's going to take you straight through the centre of London, but with the added complications that half the roads the sat-nav want you to go down, you can't go down because you've got a 2-metre height restriction. Most of Paris is restricted by 2-metre height restrictions. So even if you was to follow your sat-nav, you wouldn't be able to use the roads that's telling you to go down anyway. Paris, avoid like the plague. Trust me. I've also noticed something else. People have stopped using TomToms because they like their phones because it's got up-to-date traffic on it. All you need to do is to go on your TomTom, go to settings, go to Bluetooth, pair the phone to your phone, and now your sat-nav is now got traffic, live traffic, because it's getting the data from your phone. That way saves you having 2 devices, save your hands playing with your phone, trying to sort something out. So TomToms are really, really good if they've got internet. And every TomTom is built with Bluetooth built in so it can talk to your phone to get the data. So let me just put some things up here. So whenever we go to Spain, it's quite funny actually, because whenever I go to Spain, I go via Rouen. So I go Rouen and then I come out at the top end near Santander. When John from the office drives to Spain, he go via Reims. So he go, if you're looking at France, he go east of France, I go west of France. And then Jim, he goes right down the middle, but he still hopefully avoids Paris. And Jim does that because he likes that route and he knows that route. John does that because he knows that route and he likes that route. But actually, if you was to put in TomTom the route you're going and then put 3 routes, it will show you the 3 routes we use, and there's actually plus or minus 10 minutes between the 3 of them. So I'm not bent out of shape which route you choose, providing you avoid Paris. If you can Spain and trust. Yeah, so I always put my final address into the sat nav where I'm going to go, and then I will add Rouen as a via point. You have to be a little bit careful there though, because it will take you to, like, it will say, do you want to go to the center of Rouen? And you would put yes, but then once you're approaching Rouen, as in you're coming into Rouen, you then reroute with Rouen out of the question, so you're just going to your final destination. Always avoid country roads. Country roads and ambulances are never good fun, and there's been lots of times, pardon me, on diversions it will take you off onto country roads. The sat nav doesn't know you're in a big vehicle. That's one thing which needs to be kind of, technology needs to catch up. But if you fail to plan your journey, you plan to fail, because if you just get on, put it in your destination and don't take any notice of where you're going or what route you're taking, trust me, you're going to go through Paris, and your journey is going to be a nightmare. So I've had, I won't mention the team, I've had people go to, I don't know where they went to, but their destination should have been 9 hours from Calais, and it took them 15 because they didn't follow that rule. Now, that's unacceptable. So follow the advice. If you end up going via I've got messages popping up, hope you don't see them. If you end up going via Paris and you hadn't planned a route, I'm not paying for it. You've all been warned. Connect your phone, as I said, it's as good as Waze or Google. And your patient's now deteriorating. You're in Europe, you don't know where the nearest hospital is. I don't know if this video is going to work because I'm doing a live recording. I might, like the other video, I don't think it will work, but we'll try.
So, good afternoon. You
This.
are in a foreign country, you don't know anything around you, but you've got your sat nav, and the patient in the back has deteriorated.
Weird watching myself.
Clearly, the clinician in the back hopefully with the patient. Your job is to now get the patient to hospital as quickly as you can. Pull over. You can't be typing and driving at the same time. This is dangerous, especially in a foreign country where you don't know the roads. Blue lights on if you're an emergency ambulance, or pull off as safe and as quickly as possible. And so many people don't know this trick, so I'm just going to show you for those who don't know. And I'm going to put my glasses on. Okay, so your sat-nav should already be keyed into satellites, and your sat-nav will know where you are. This is a new one, still got the film in. The first thing you're going to do is hit menu, search, then I'm going to type in HOS, H-O-S, for hospital. When it works, H-O-S, and if you come up here, hospital clinic, and that's the only thing you need to do. Now, if I get rid of the keyboard button here, in distance order, it's telling you your distance are all the different hospitals near you. That's tip 1. Tip 2 is to look at the names. Now, obviously, in foreign countries, you're not going to know all the words, but you're looking for keywords like urgencies or A&E, which you won't see abroad. So here we know that William Harvey is our nearest A&E, and it's closest, it is as the crow flies 6 miles. So I'm looking on the list for urgencies or urgencia, depending on what country you're going to. So hit the hospital, and then it's gonna select. There we go. Thank you very much.
I think what I missed off on that video was if you was just to type in hospital and hit the one at the top of the list, on the example I just done in the office, you'd go to Hoffield Brain Injury Centre. Now, that's not where you want to take a very sick patient, is it? You want the equivalent of a William Harvey, and as I say, in Spain, it's urgencia. In France, it's something similar, Hospital de la Urgency or something, I don't know. But you will see the word urgency of some description normally in the description of the hospital, and that's the one you want to go to. My hair looks a little bit better on that one, doesn't it, than it does here right now. It's a little bit growing a bit wild side here. Okay, plan the bloody route. So the Repat ambulance, I have spent so long getting these ambulances how I wanted them. Adding things on them, making sure, because I used to do them all the time, I would think, right, what do I want as a crew member, you know? What's going to make it more comfortable for the patient and more comfortable for the crew to reduce fatigue, increase comfort and all this, you know? So 4 of the things which comes to mind which I've put on there, one is the coffee machine. You will get coffee from the Flexi Lounge going out and coming back, even if the Flexi Lounge is closed, which is overnight. I think it closes at 10:30 at night French time. And of course, if you're going to France and back in a day, not in a day, in a 2-day, normally when you get to the Flexi Lounge is closed, but they're still open for coffee. If you haven't been in the Flexi Lounge and know what I'm on about, when you go through the main door, you're in like a foyer area. In this foyer area, they've got the toilets and they've got a coffee machine and a few little snacks laid out. But the doors you go in to get all your food, that's all locked up. So you can still go in there, even if they're closed, grab yourself a coffee, but be mindful of the train times. What you don't want to do, massive mistake, and trust me, I've done this mistake, is I've walked into the lounge, got a coffee for the patient, crewmate got a coffee, we both had a wee, Got back in the ambulance, drove to the lane. We just missed the train and we had to wait another 3 hours. Now, after you've been driving all day, the last thing you want to do is sit at Calais for 3 hours waiting for the next train. Not a good move. Would I have sacrificed that coffee for a 3 hour wait? Absolutely. So what I should have done was looked at the departure times before I went into the lounge and got me coffee. Coffee machines on board, so don't panic about you not having a coffee. DVD player. You do not know how important this DVD player is, and I'm going to give you a massive tip. Patients often get in pain. We're going to talk about this in a bit because I still see it even on short journeys to London with a patient. I done a cardiac Friday, and halfway through the journey, the patient was, oh, my back hurt, oh, my back hurt, my bum is numb. And I know what's happened because I've seen it 1,000 times. So this is what happens. Hopefully I do cover this in another video, but it's in my head. I've got to tell you now. So the stretcher, the patient's sitting upright in the stretcher. I can't even do it with my hands. The stretcher is kind of, we know the shape of the stretcher. Patient sitting on a stretcher. As the ambulance bounce up and down, hitting all the potholes. So I'm exaggerating now. As the ambulance bounce up and down on the potholes, on our rough roads, the patient very slightly lift up off the stretcher and they slide down a little bit. Now their bum is not sitting in the part of the stretcher where it's bent. So I say to the patient, when he's saying, oh, me back hurt, me bum hurt, I say, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to just pull you up the stretcher. You wait there. I put my hands, I stand behind him, grab hold of the sheet each side. I've got to do it so you can see it on the video. Grab hold of the sheet each side, pull them up the stretcher a little bit. They go from here to, oh, that's so much better. Thank you, buddy. That little bit, okay? You need to know this. Anyway, on a long distance, Spain to the UK, you will be doing this pulling up the sheet about 15 times if you're to do it properly. Now, because the customer is always in pain because they're laid on the stretcher for a long period of time and it's not comfortable. Trust me, I know it's not comfortable for a great period of time. Two things we do to avoid that. Some people put some stuff at the bottom end so patients can push with their feet and push themselves back up again. That's if you've got a distance between the ramp and the bottom of the stretcher. To reduce that and to make it more comfortable for the patient, if they can tolerate it, lower the stretcher back slightly more. So every time you pull them up, I just knock a little bit the stretcher back a little bit. Is that all right? I'm just going to lower you a little bit because that will reduce that sliding down. They're normally good with that. Now, I can also give them some paracetamol if you're a FREC 4 plus or above, and it's no contraindications, and they're not messing up, mixing in with the drugs they're already taken. You can give them a little 2 paracetamol. But here is the thing: a lot of patients are in a constant pain. We pick up a lot of patients on pain relief anyway. And going back, I've detoured now. Going back to the DVD player, I will say to a patient, got a DVD player, would you like to watch a film? Now, sometimes yes, sometimes, oh no, I don't want to watch a film. Now I'm going to try to persuade them, and I'm going to tell you why I'm going to persuade them. It ain't because I want to listen to Top Gun. I say to the patient, well, as if you're the patient, I will say, look, I know you may not want to watch a film. I get that. You know, you might just want to relax and whatever. But what a film will do is take your mind from the pain in your back and focus it on something else. When you're focused on a film, which you're watching, even though you might not want to watch it, when that film is playing, your mind is now thinking of the film, not thinking about the pain. So I will explain that to the patient. I say, so look, why don't we put something on just to see if we can use it as the distraction from your pain for a bit? And it normally works. I normally get a smile, and it's like you can see it's like that little bit of magic. I call a DVD player our best analgesic because it really is. People who live with pain like that no amount of painkillers will sort their pain out. They have to use different methods, and it is all in, not all in the mind. I'm not explaining that very well, but they have to manage their pain, and they manage their pain by not thinking about their pain. If you spend your day thinking about your pain, you're in pain a lot more than focusing your minds on different things other than your pain. And that DVD is that great distraction. So always put a film on. Key player, the DVD. Cold drinks. I actually think mainly I am the only person who benefits from cold drinks, because I can't drink a warm fizzy can. I know some people can, I can't. So I've always had a fridge because I always like cold drinks. From 3 o'clock in the morning, give me something cold. But we can keep the patients' sandwiches in there if they've gotten from a hospital, their lunch. Ensure as well that the protein drinks in a hospital, not all patients can have them from a fridge. But I'm telling you what, if I was 80 years old, I'd want mine in a fridge. I wouldn't want to drink a lukewarm thick shake. But for some patients, it can actually chill them down. They could become colder. So you do have to be mindful. And what I normally say to a patient, if I've got Ensure for them, is how do you like it? Do you like it room temperature, or would you like me to put it in the fridge and chill it down a little bit? If they're a coldy person, they're always cold. The last thing you want to do is put it in the fridge. Yeah, it just makes it more bearable for some, not everyone. Another pet heave of mine, and this is a dangerous pet heave, so please listen to this part. The cardiac monitor is, as I've put on there, your third crewmate. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. If you want to shut your eyes because you've been on the road all day and the patient's asleep and they're wired up to the cardiac monitor and you want to nap, I've got no problem with that as long as you're not driving. So, and this is where your third crewmate, your cardiac monitor, will take effect. Where my bugbear is, staff are not knowing how to use them correctly and they silence them all. They think it's really cool to turn the alarms off. Mainly, I think, on the Tempest. If I see a clinician turning the alarms off and leaving them off, they will not be working for me anymore. It is the most dangerous thing you can do. The Tempest is designed to turn the alarms off and to turn the flashy lights off because it's a special forces military bit of kit. You don't want to be in a field in a war zone with this machine going boop, 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 check pulse ox, boop, 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 and flashy lights going everywhere. So it's called a tactical mode, so you can disable it. Crews think it's cool to put it on tactical mode. Trust me, it's not cool. The other reason crews put it on tactical mode is because a lot of cardiac monitors have a range. So I'm going to talk saturations. We know a normal patient who's not COPD, we know what their range of saturations is. 94 and above is their normal range. So if their saturations dropped, let's say for argument, to 93%, the machine will go boop, 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 and it will alert you the saturations in the patient has dropped. If you're in tactical mode, you're not going to know. If you've now nodded off, because it is 2 o'clock in the morning, patient is asleep and they are all connected, and I'm going to give you a really stupid example, but let's say the patient goes into cardiac arrest and you've got cardiac monitoring on. It would not make a noise or flash a light because you've got it on silent, and this is why it's so dangerous. Know how to adjust the range. Now, what I mean by that is, if your patient's heart rate is normal at 110, that will send any machine into beep mode, okay? Because it's out of the range, it's above the upper limit. But if it's normal for the patient and you set the heart rate upper range at 115 or 120, the lower range is kind of, I don't know what you set the lower range at, 60, 80, we shouldn't make any odds. But if the upper range is causing it to beep and it's normal for the patient, then you set the alarm to go up slightly above it. What people are doing is 110 is setting off the alarm, so rather than changing the parameter, they're putting it on silent. Very dangerous. Do not do it. Hope I've explained that well enough. If I haven't, come and get me and I'll explain it better, but I'm hoping I have explained it well enough. Never ever put the machine on silent. Okay, that's it. I think that's it. Okay, next slide. Well, I'm going to skip this one really quick. I'm putting this on because I always want to collect a patient from a hospital. If a patient says to me he's ready for discharge, we'll probably take home Granny tonight and you collect her from home tomorrow, I will say no, 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 because collecting them from a hospital means normally all these things. They will still have a urine catheter. We'll come on to that later. There's still an IV line if something goes wrong. They may have a peg line in for peg feeding. We get all the discharge paperwork given to us. We've got drugs charts, previous observations. We can assess the pressure sores in a hospital environment. Any infection markers we're going to know about because the hospital's going to tell us, and we've got all the notes to receive in hospital. And what I've missed off there is the drugs. Normally the hospital say, here's the drugs for the next 2 days. I normally ask for 2 days worth of drugs if I've got a patient for a day, or 3 days if I've got them for 2 days. So collecting them from a home, none of that is there. So again, prep. We will always try to get everything in place, but I always want to collect from a hospital, not a house, if I can choose that. So expectations. This is where you need to be strong as a crew. Some people on a repat, and I'm talking patients and family, were still family because family think we're going to be pulling over every 3 hours for a picnic on the side of the motorway. That does not happen. We do not stop for dinner. We do not stop for lunch. And I'm going to tell you why. From Alicante back to Kent with a patient is generally 22 hours. If by the time we've got back those 22 hours, the crews have had enough, as in they've done 22 hours on the road, the patient's already uncomfortable, the family member sitting in the ambulance chair is definitely uncomfortable because those ambulance chairs for 22 hours is not comfy at all. If you're stopping every 5 minutes for lunch, for drinks, for a little walkabout, your 22-hour journey is going to end up into 26, 28 hours. You have put that patient through all that unnecessary extra travel or extra time on a stretcher, and it's not necessary. So we do not stop. And if you explain it to the patient, like I've just explained it to you, trust me, when they get back to the yard or to their hospital, they will thank you. If your 22-hour journey turned into a 28-hour journey, trust me, they will not thank you. You might think you're doing them a little favour, stop them for a nice lunch. You're not, because then they need toilets more. The family will like, oh, can we stop now? You know, this chair's really uncomfortable. Get them in the ambulance, get them back. The only time the ambulance should stop is patient needs. We need to change the patient. We need to do it. Fuel, which I call fluid exchanges. Diesel in, wee out. Whenever we're at a petrol station, is fill up, empty the bladder. If you want to grab a snack from the petrol station, get back into the vehicle, go. And then, of course, you can have a drink and eat whilst the vehicle wheels are rolling. So tell them why, and I guarantee you they will thank you for it when you get back. Try to manage. Yeah, if you can manage the patient single-handed in the back, again, it will minimize stops. Sometimes it is a 2-person job for patient care, definitely for patient care. And you know, some people are not strong enough to pull a patient up the stretcher, like I was telling you about their back, because they could be quite large and you might need 2 people to do it. So but if you can do it on your own, that's again, you're stopping the vehicle, pulling over. do you know what? A stop, by the time you've stopped, got round, done everything for the patient, got back around, is always a 30-minute stop. You're always adding 30 minutes on each stop. Family should have a packed lunch at the lounge. I've told you coffee is available. Yeah, and a lot of patients are smokers, and they want a fag on the way back. And a lot of them are alcohol dependent. A lot of them are alcoholics, and they will ask if they can have a beer. And alcohol is a subject which I've done a lot of work around, as in I've asked a lot of questions to a lot of medics. If the patient is, I'm going to give you an example. If the patient has broke their leg, just an irrelevant injury, they're not really on much medication, they're in a cast, and she likes a glass of wine on a night, I will buy her a little glass of wine for the journey back, providing it's not going to interfere with any of her medications, which say avoid alcohol. If I've got an alcoholic on board, we may have to give them alcohol depending on when they last had it, but I'll be on the advice of the doctor from the hospital. Because as we know, an alcoholic who's alcohol dependent, stopping alcohol like this is really dangerous. So you need to research or know or ask a clinical lead, what in this case are we doing? We have picked up an alcoholic from Croatia once. It was the worst trip back I had. We had to give him alcohol to start to bring him down, and I thought I would come up with a cunning plan. I'm not going to go buy a bottle of vodka for him to get absolutely wasted on in the back. I'll get him some low alcohol beer. Well, not low alcohol, but like 3-4% beer. I thought that was a winning combination. That way he's not going to get absolutely plastered. That was the worst trip back, because he wanted beer after beer after beer. And what does that mean when you haven't got a catheter? Every 5 minutes he wanted to stop, and it was the worst, longest journey I've ever had. He was bouncing off the walls. He was making his wife bounce off the walls. It was awful. So alcohol can be really problematic. But again, this is where planning will come in. Clinical advice will come in, as in what to do for the best. And we'll make that decision for you. It won't be your decision. We've took a young girl to an institute for rehab, and the only way the NHS, this is you'll be shocked at this, the only way the NHS got the permission to take her was that she done a deal that we would give her a little bit of wine on the way up there, and that's the only way she'd get on the ambulance. She couldn't even walk, and she was very early 20s. She was a very lovely girl, and we picked her up after rehab as well 8 weeks later, where obviously she didn't have wine, and she was a total different girl, beautiful girl she was. So yeah, alcohol is a decision we'd make. I've gone on about that way too long than I need to. Patient care. So this is the rounds now of where care starts to come in to a patient where you wouldn't normally do on a PTS truck, because hopefully they would be clean when you picked them up. If you'd only had a 5 or 10 minute journey, and providing they're clean when you collect them, you would get them to where they're going, as in normally their care home, and they would change them there. We don't have the bits on board to change for a patient. But on a repat, when it is a 22-24 hour journey, we will need to pay to change them. And every patient goes to the toilet, and I'm going to tell you why. Even constipated patients, because you've now took a patient from a still hospital bed into a bouncing ambulance. It's one of the best laxatives you can have as a patient, is a bouncing ambulance for 22 hours. Because if you've got any blockages below, my God, are they going to be free? And they're going to come out everywhere. And you need to be prepared for it. Now, the repat ambulances are built for changing a patient, as in what we've got on board. We do have extractor fans on board, and I'm going to tell you how to make them work. And I don't mean just press the button. Extractor fan usage, I'm going to talk to you about that first. So first of all, you're going to tell the patient that just for their comfort, our comfort, there'll be a little noise of the fan running, and as long as they know that, everything's going to be fine. So I will turn the extractor fan on in the back, press the extractor button, air's going to come out. Then I'll go to the cab at the front, make sure your vents are open, and turn airflow so air is coming in via the dash, through the bulkhead. Open the window if you've got a sealed bulkhead, so it's going to get fresh air through, past the patient, collecting the smell, up via the vent and extract out. You're creating a in past the patient, out, in past the patient, out. So it's bringing that airflow. It's air changes, which is important. If you've changed a patient, you've made sure they're clean. Cleaning a patient is paramount. One, dignity. Of course, nobody wants to be in a dirty nappy or a dirty pad. Two, pressure sore care. A lot of patients, we know as medics, pressure sores are really dangerous. They can open up to infection. Now, I say they're a lot more dangerous abroad because I've always found in Europe they're not all over it like we are. In the UK, we seem to be a lot more better trained on pressure sores. We know the dangers, but in Europe, it's like, yeah, they got a pressure sore, kind of whatever, and it's like, oh no. So obviously, pressure sore care is really important. If the hospital is all over it and they've cleaned it and got everything and they're covered and they've sealed it, leave it sealed for the one journey. The only time you're going to interfere with that is if it gets soiled when the patient gets soiled. Then you may want to change it. And there are barrier creams on board and there are pressure dressings on board. You should all know how to do a dressing. If not, comment below and we'll put a session on. We've got air freshener in the ambulance. Don't do an obvious whoops like this in front of the patient. That's really not professional. So you can just do a little discreet squirt and hide. Well, just put the air freshener back. Have you changed? Yeah. So hands up here. The first time I had to change a pad, and probably the last time too. I don't think it was only till a year ago. I didn't even know that there was a front and a back. Okay, I've done lots of things medical. I'm really lucky for all the things I've managed to do medically. But I was very embarrassed that I couldn't even put a nappy on. I think it's because I've never had children. But I didn't even know there's a front and a back. They all look the same to me. You kind of just put it on and Velcro the sides. How wrong I was. So if you need a hand and you are in the same category as me and you don't know how to put a nappy on, grab Sarah. She will take you through it. Right. The patient's now covered in poo because it's seeped out the nappy. There's been a bit of explosion below. What are we going to do now? This is why we carry spare sheets, obviously, for the bed. Poo will go on the blanket. We've got spare blankets. And we've got spare gowns and pyjamas. I have, on one journey back from Spain to the UK, gone through 5 sheets and 5 blankets. I emptied my cupboards and I panicked that it wouldn't be going anymore because I'd run out of sheets and blankets. Never leave on a repat unless you've got 5 sheets and 5 blankets. And if you can get more blankets on board, great, because if you've got a family and they're cold, they probably want to keep them warm. Then the patient gets a bit chilly. You want to give them an extra blanket. You've already used 4 and you've only got 1 left in the cupboard. And what happens now if the patient gets poo on 2 of them? Well, they're now down to 1 blanket and you're already run out. And that's 5 and you're probably thinking 5 is an overkill. We should probably make blankets like 8. Okay, the waste bins in France at the petrol stations, they're not a dustbin normally. They are a crater. They are this massive big thing, and they've got bin holes on the top. They go into the ground. They're the size of they're almost like the diesel tank which you see at the yard, that in the ground. They are huge. You can put clinical waste in them because you wouldn't want to know what I've seen in these things. You know, dirty HGV drivers, they pee in bottles and they chuck it all in there. So you can put it in there, or obviously bring it back to the yard sealed, and we will dispose of it in our clinical waste bags. But I get all rid of my clinical waste abroad. Know what the difference is between a blue clinical Clinell wipe and a green Clinell wipe. I'm going to tell you what the difference is. They both kill bacteria. The green and the blue will kill equal bacteria. The difference between the blue and the green is the blue one is safe for your skin. Believe it or not, the green one's continued use. You shouldn't really have them on your skin. Now, you should have. A lot of people I've been auditing lately asking, when do you use a canal wipe over pink spray? Most people have got it wrong. Most people think you use pink spray, blue roll, and then canal wipe. Pink spray and blue roll and canal wipes do exactly the same thing. Canal wipes, green canal wipes, I'm digressing here, are only for hard to clean areas like the side of a stretcher, the rail, the steering wheel, an air vent. Your default cleaner is pink spray and blue roll. Your blue canal wipes are purely for your hands. But you've also got your hand sanitizer, remember. Whenever the patient go on the stretcher, always put an ink coat pad down. They have been a lifesaver, especially when you're getting low on sheets, because it's easy to change an Inco pad. Not so easy for a large patient to change a sheet. Okay, fine. I think we've covered patient care well enough. Stool chart, poop colour, quite explanational. You're not going to remember what all the colours are, but if it doesn't look normal, you know there's something going on there. You can see the Bristol stool chart on the right. Starting with Maltesers, going to gravy from type 1 to type 7. And of course, most patients' stools are always loose. Again, they've been in hospital, they've been eating shit food normally, and suddenly they're now jumping up and down in an ambulance, making all the bowels move. So you can see that, you know, we're normally doing type 6 to 7. But write it on your PRF, which we'll come to in a minute. So, what else can we do? So you've got to think that you're on a long distance now. It ain't just about keeping the patient's bum clean. You can brush their hair. Are their lips dry? Can we put something on their lips to make it more comfortable for them? Any mouth care? We can do some mouth care if needed. Even foot care. I've done foot care on board. I'll show you that in a second. It's not about doing the bare minimum. It's about doing what you can as if they are your loved ones. If you treat every single patient like they're your parents, you're never going to go wrong. I don't know if I've mentioned this already. I seem to think I have, but actually I don't think I have. Hot or cold? Bugbear. If I have said this, sorry, I'm just going to repeat it. Actually, I don't care saying it twice because it's that important. If you're in the back of the ambulance and you think it's a bit chilly in here, I'm going to turn the heater on, you're too late. The patient is already too cold because they've been laying in a bed really cold because they're not moving. You are. They haven't got as much clothes on as you, so they're going to get colder before you. If you think that they're cold, if you think you're cold and you turn the heating on, you failed them. So this is what you do. The moment they come on board the ambulance, even at 30 degrees in Spain, you turn the heater on, set it to 22, and then when it gets cold overnight, because the temperature, when we get into France, the heater comes on its own. You haven't got to worry about it. I'm sure I've said that. Patient restraints, big problem. they don't want to wear a restraint. Well, they're happy to start with, but it becomes annoying. Now, I've been in the back of the ambulance. I mentioned when I was ill a couple of times, and I told you I always put my harnesses on. Now, when I sleep, I have to sleep on my side. I normally sleep on my side. I'm most comfortable on my side. Being on your side on a stretcher, you can do on a full body harness. So if a patient wants to go on their side, take the harness off, facilitate it, get them on their side, and then you can build the harnesses back on around them. They will love you for it because it gets them off their sore bum, it makes them comfortable, and it'll give them the best night's sleep they've wanted for ages. But remember the law. If people don't have their harness on in the back, it is the driver who will be prosecuted in an event of an accident. Driver, make sure your crewmate has got their seatbelt on in the back, and make sure your patient has got their restraint on. Now, logic would say, well, the crewmate's in the back, it's his job to make sure the patient's got his harness on. That's my thought too. But in law, that doesn't take any notice of that. It's the driver's responsibility. It always has been, it always will be. Do not move that ambulance unless everyone's got their harness on. This was a guy I picked up in Bulgaria. He said he'd just had a shower that morning, or the staff said he'd just had a shower that morning. He'd been in there for 3 months. His clothes he had on, I would say he had on for the 3 months he was in there. I got my fast cuts out and cut his clothes off in the ward. They were stuck to him. He was in this, oh my God. I picked him up from a place of care, and he was rank. Poor chap, right? They didn't care for him. They didn't clean him. They didn't wash him. Yet there was this love and, if only they had the CQC over there. So whilst he was on board I cut his clothes off, put him in the gown, but I left his socks on because I thought that would be all right. Then on board the ambs, I thought, I will take his sock off actually, let his feet breathe, and that is what I found. You can see below his foot there, like massive layers of skin. They hadn't been washed. What do you do in a place like that? So I cleaned him, I washed his feet, and I had some moisturizer lotion, which I applied to. So look, I haven't fixed his foot, but hopefully I've made it a lot better. I've cleaned it, I've took the bacteria off it, I've took the loose flaky skin off it, and I've moisturised it for him. His foot thanked me that day. I couldn't hand over a patient to a hospital in that condition. I would need shooting. So these are the little things about patient care that we can do. Don't always assume someone else has done them. Big mistake. Spain do not care for patients like we care for patients. Remember, you can go to Spain and collect a patient and they're strapped to the bed. Most of you will know this already. It is down to the family to look after the patient. If no family have been there, you're going to collect a patient in a state. The time to clean them is in the bed, because it's easier to clean in a hospital bed than it is to clean on the ambulance. So clean them, put them into the gown, get them onto clean sheets in the hospital, then get them on back. I obviously made a mistake there with the feet. I wasn't expecting that. Let's move on. So we're now going to talk about the paperwork. The more experienced you are medically, the more you will write. Now, think of the grades like a first aider, a FREC 3, a FREC 4, a technician, a paramedic, a CCP, and a doctor. That I just mentioned 7 grades there. If every one of those 7 grades saw the same problem, the first aider would be like 1 line, FREC 3 would be a couple of lines, FREC 4 would be 4 lines, tech might be 5. By the time you've got to the doctor, you've got 4 pages of information for the same thing. And that's because the more experienced you are, you know how important it is to document, one, what you've done, but secondly, and this is most importantly, what you haven't done and why you haven't done it. If it's written down, you've considered it, you've done it, or you've actioned something. If it's not written down, you're now culpable. Why didn't you do this? I did. You didn't because it isn't written down. Ah, but I done it. I'm sorry, that won't work in a court of law. The patient's now dead. You brought them in severely dehydrated, and your notes say you haven't even given them a drink in the last 10 hours. But I offered them a drink. Did you write that down? No. So the paperwork, I cannot tell you, especially for repatriations or long distance, how imperative it is you write down everything. If you think about something for that patient, write it down. If you are the senior clinician on board and you are now driving, make sure you're telling the crewmate who is not clinically in charge what he's doing. He's got a plan and he's documenting everything he has done. Is that clear? Because as senior clinician, you're still responsible. So you want to make sure you're both on the same page. This is what we're going to do. I need you to do me a full set of obs. I need you to work out the patient's news score because their obs are due at 9 o'clock tonight. Blah, 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 blah. Make sure it's all happening. Make sure you're documenting it. So this here is how we document it. This is some examples I've just written on a standard patient on any repat. Okay, so I'm going to read you them. So on the 18th of the 7th 24 at 9:05 in the morning, I asked the patient if they wanted to drink or food, and the patient refused. They refused fluids. I encouraged the patient to drink, but they refused. That's me. At 9:20, 15 minutes later, reposition the pillows under the body to reduce pressure sores. We know pressure sores, they can't stay in the same position. We need to regularly move them, readjust them, and document that we've done it. At 10 o'clock, gave patient their morning meds as prescribed. Check date, drug amount against the prescription, and entered onto the form of documented that I've gave them their own medication. CB, obviously me and CB, cross-checked. So any drug you give, your crewmate must cross-check, which will come on to drugs in a bit. All meds were given PO per oral. 10:15, third set of observations done. Patient is now at a new score of 3, which is better. Patient seems more relaxed. Check patient's pad, as in their nappy. No signs of urine or smell of stools. 10:35, patient complained about bad back. Boy, you'll write that sometimes. Lifted patient up the stretcher and was sliding down. Lowered the stretcher slightly to reduce sliding down and placed pillows under the feet. Pardon me, I didn't write that down. 10:42, offered patient a drink. This time the patient took fluids and I recorded how much fluid they took on the fluid chart. 11:06, patient SATs dropped below 92. Lifted the stretcher back so patient more upright and SATs increased to 96. We'll keep a close eye on SATs. Now, the bad back we spoke about. This is a very common entry. It'll be a very common complaint on a long journey. Sore bum, bad back. Slide them up the stretcher. The other common thing, and this is where you mustn't panic, is patient SATs dropping. Lots of patients SATs drop because of their head positioning on the stretcher, or they're falling asleep and not positional asphyxia, but their position will cause their SATs to drop. Most of the time, by just lifting the patient up, making sure the head is clear, you will watch their SATs come back up. What I don't want you to do is see a patient SATs drop to 92, panic, get 100% air mask out and start putting them on oxygen. Remember the primary survey. Dr. A is airway. Make sure they've got an open airway and everything is clear. Once you've gave them an open airway, you will find the SATs naturally increase. Okay. Obviously, the caveat of that is they could be a COPD patient. You need to know their range, and you might need to. A COPD patient, I find their SATs do drop overnight. Okay, so you might need to put, again, it's knowing your patient, knowing what their needs are. They might need topping up during the day every now and again, but they might need half a litre or 1 litre overnight when they sleep. You just need to keep an eye on it and know your ranges. But the O2 is a common problem, and the pain in the back is a common problem. Okay. So this is the new score. I am not going to play you this video. I don't actually think the one I put on here was a very good video. I did put it on YouTube. I told you earlier that watch some videos on YouTube. This one was a bad one. I just put the first one on there, which I come to. But let's talk about News 2. So we are on News 2. There used to be News and now there's News 2. They've made it a lot better. As I said to you before, this tells you whether your patient is getting worse, getting better, or staying the same. This is your indicator of, do I need to divert? So my first question for you all. When will the news, when should, on average, and it's an average, will your score be the worst? So you're collecting a patient, and your first set of observations, as I've put at the bottom, first set of observations is on board the ambulance before you leave. Your second set of observations must be after 30 minutes, and then you'll decide how often you're going to do your observations depending on the clinical picture you've got. But my question to you is, out of all the sets of observations you're going to do from the very start to the very end, when's going to be the worst set? Do you know? And I'm going to tell you. The worst set should always be the first set, because you've got a panicked patient, maybe not panicked, but maybe nervous, apprehensive. So their heart rate's going to be slightly faster, their breathing rate will be slightly faster, their blood pressure will be raised, hopefully their temperature is not. Those three things of heart rate, resps, and blood pressure will make your news score higher. This is why we do a second set after 30 minutes once everything's calmed down. They're looking out the window, they're talking to the crew. This isn't as bad as I thought it's going to be, and your news score will suddenly go from a 4 to a 1 or to a 0, hopefully, depending on the patient. So always expect the worst news score to be the first. This is why understanding of how the news system and scoring works is imperative. Thorough set of observations at the start of the repat is essential. Use your full scope of what you're capable of doing. I'm not just talking about chucking a pulse ox on and a blood pressure cuff. I'm talking about looking at them in the eyes, as in recording the eyes. Make sure you've got temperature. You need temperature for the news chart anyway. Listen to the patient's chest. Listen to how they're breathing. Is there any noises there? Look at the patient's colour. Is there any irregularity with the eyes? Every little thing you notice, you need to jot down. And I'm going to tell you why. If you look at the bottom there, I've got Craig's first repat, CVA, Spain. My very, very first trip to Spain, I was with a paramedic. I done the first stint driving. I got then in the back with the patient. I was a freck. I wasn't even a freck, I don't think. I was a FPOS I, which is similar to freck 3. I got in Anyway, then by the time the paramedic come back in, after about an hour, I think we'd done about like 8 hours at this point. The paramedic said, "When you was in the back, did you notice his eyes?" I said, "No, I didn't. I didn't notice his eyes. He was acting the same. His observations were the same." But he said, "Did you notice his eyes?" I said, "No." He said, "One eyeball is slightly larger than the other." I said, "I've got to be honest. I didn't look into it. I wasn't experienced enough to look into his eyes." I had a paramedic on board for that. So he panicked, the paramedic, because he said obviously it could be shown he had another bleed again. So we diverted to a hospital. We was at this hospital for 4 hours probably, while they done scans, they done this, they done that, and he had no bleed or no additional bleed because luckily we had the discs from the hospital. They could compare the scan which they just done to the scan which they'd done before. So here's the moral of the story. What the paramedic hadn't done was looked into his eyes and recorded them before we left. They weren't that much of a deviation, as in one wasn't that much bigger than the other, but there was a slight difference. If he'd have recorded that at the beginning, that 4-hour diver would have been avoidable because he'd have seen that we'd already documented it and saw it before you left. That's why you need to know everything about that patient's observations before you leave, so you've got something to compare with, like the eyeballs 8 hours later. We know that it was like that when we got them, and you've recorded it. Trust me, since that very, very first repat, I've made sure I've done a thorough full set of observations on every single patient. It's called your starting point. Everything you're going to compare the patient with will be from when you've got them on board, okay? Their clinical picture. And I'll tell you another reason why this is. You could be bringing back some end-of-life patients who are big sick. They may be in their final days of living on this planet. If you've got a big sick patient, the last thing you want to do, and everything's fine, the patient's coming back to die, when you hand over that patient to the onward crew, you don't want them getting on board thinking, "I've got this very sick patient, I need to divert." And that's happened before, where it's like, "Oh my god, he's got this, he's got that." Yes, because this is how we've collected him, the family's aware, the hospital's aware, this is how the notes were handed over, he's in his final stages. You've got to remember, final stages of life, they're normally big sick, their news score is normally quite high. So if it's all documented from the beginning, the plan is there, then we know what the news 2 score is, we know what the news 2 score was in the hospital we collected them at, you know your patient hasn't got any worse. Okay, that's the key to this. Regular recording, you can see the trends. Any question on news, ask me in the office or ask anybody in the know and they'll tell you, okay? So this is something we introduced. S-bar, there's lots of handover tools, but an S-bar is generally a nurse-to-nurse handover, okay? We use the S-bar for the crew coming back from Europe to hand over to the onward crew. We've made this a lot better because we never used to do an S-bar. Now, if you look at the form just above my head, you'll see the crew handover set of observations. This is me handing over to you, and you're now going to take them for their onward journey. And then you who I've handed over to, just before you get to the hospital, you've got their set of observations. So we've got observations to compare to. What I love about an S-bar is, or an S-baro, I should say, is I feel that I'm a confident and competent medic, but when I'm standing in front of a load of nurses and doctors at a hospital, I will fumble my words and I will look so bad. I'm like, blah, blah, blah. The words I want to use don't come out of my mouth, okay? I feel under pressure, so my speech goes horrible. I was like, blah, blah, blah. It's not quite that bad. But anyway, this is the advantage of an S-bar. What I'm going to say to the doctors and nurses is written in front of me, and I've even started it on the situation. Thank you for seeing Mr. Smith, this 86-year-old male. We have collected this patient today from yesterday from Alicante and have brought them to you. I am concerned about blah 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 blah, and all this will be handwritten. The background about the patient, the assessment, recommendations, and any other comments. So any member of staff should be able to do a confident and competent handover at the hospital using the SBARO. Okay, it will all be written out. And if you are like me, and I know there's a lot of you like me who will fumble their words, not quite know what to say when you're feeling under pressure, all that will eradicate with an SBARO. Okay, I think that's it. That's the handover. So, medication administration. So this is to FREC 4 pluses and above. So here I've written on my medication administration record that I've administered myself oh no, not myself. Well, I have administered them, but they're the patient's own meds. Now, whether they're hospital meds, as in they're prescribed, whether they're the patient's own meds and they're taking them themselves, or whether we're prescribing them, they're the three different things. Patient's own meds, they're taking them. Hospital meds are given to us and we're giving them out. You record each one in turn, in as much as if the patient's taken 2 paracetamol, you'd still record it. But in the notes at the end, you would say patient's taken 1 gram of paracetamol, okay? But if you're prescribing it, you would still record it and put that you've prescribed it. So on here, you could see my top line, paracetamol, 1 gram of paracetamol, 2 500 milligram tablets. The route is per oral. I've gave 1 gram at 8 o'clock in the morning, 1 gram at 12 midday, and 1 gram at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And they were the patient's own medications. Okay, so all the medications that patient consumed, be it hospital, their own, or you're prescribing, are going to be on this form. That way you've got one document to know what's gone inside that patient's body. Some medications you get given by a hospital are PRN medication, meaning they're only there if needed. They're not prescribed as in every day, every week. A PRN medication, hopefully you all know what that means. It's just as and when required. So, for example, an asthma pump, most people, the blue one, most people would only use when they start getting wheezy. Okay, as opposed to you take it every 6 hours. That's almost a PRN medication, as and when you need it. Paracetamol, if you've got a headache, technically it's a PRN medication, because you're only going to take if you've got a headache, as opposed to being in pain all day, where you might choose to take your maximum dosage throughout a day. So we've talked about already about the DVD player, but how else can you manage pain on board? So talking to them, reposition them is a massive big one. Pillows underneath their sore parts, that will really help. Then you can go and use paracetamol and ibuprofen as per JR Calc. Remember, a lot of people can't take ibuprofen because of the contraindications. But if they can, and watch your dosage with ibuprofen too, you can do the every 2 hours mix. But it is, again, stepwise approach, starting off with the easy things first, okay? Always check the route too. So, I can't give you an example, but there was some drugs which were IM drugs, were IV drugs, as in, and some IV drugs were IM drugs, and they weren't the same as the UK. I should have wrote down the example. What I'm saying is, always check the route of the medication first, and make sure that if it is an IM drug, that you are given an IM. Don't we always, I mean, it is in the 5 checks, right? right drug, yes, of course, we always check it's the right drug. Right time, yeah, we've got that on the prescription. And right dose, we always check the dose. But also the right route. I think that's one that can always be forgot about, is the route. And this is particularly important when you're collecting a drug in Spain, which is Spanish drugs or French drugs or German drugs. Don't assume that they're the route you think they are. I think that's the message I've got to give you. Okay. Okay, so we're now on to fluid and food chart. This is something that Sarah brought in from her nursing, which is something that we've learned a lot about. So we've had other staff bring back patients and have been dehydrated when they've got back. And you'll say to a staff, or more dehydrated than they should be, and you will say to the staff member, like, oh yeah, did you check they had enough fluid? And it was like, yeah, they had a bottle of water there, and by the time we got back to the UK, they still had that same bottle of water, or they'd been drinking it, but they hadn't drunk enough water or enough fluid. A lot of patients, especially if they haven't got a catheter, don't want to drink on board. They don't want to drink on board because they don't want the hassle of you having to change them or trying to get up to go to the toilet. Okay, that's a standard classic patient problem where it shouldn't be a patient problem. Patient care, we've got to be all over, and that comes down to making sure that they're drinking enough and they're eating enough. Remember, going back to pressure sores, one of the best, most important things for pressure sores is nutrition. So they've got to be keeping up their nutrition, and they've got to be keeping up their fluid. Okay. So this is where you're going to record all the what we give the patient, and make sure you are trying to stick to keeping them hydrated, and that probably means you encouraging them to drink. So you might have cracked open a bottle of water for them and they've had a little sip, thank you very much, put it in a holder. But after half an hour, if they're not sipping it, you need to encourage them to drink. I know you might not be that thirsty, but just do me a favour and have a little bit more. Because I need you to keep your fluids up, because if you don't keep your fluids up, your blood pressure may drop and we end up having to divert to another hospital in a foreign country. We don't want to do that. We want to get you back to the UK. So if you can just drink a little bit more for me, that would be great. It's that encouragement. That's all a patient needs. Okay. Do not bring back a dehydrated patient. It's unacceptable. It is your will, if you like, to keep that patient drinking. Now, even patients without capacity who would be like, no, 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 go away, I don't want to drink, I don't want to drink, I don't want to drink, you say that's absolutely fine, that's not a problem. 5 minutes later you repeat it, because a patient, especially a dementia patient, what they were thinking 5 minutes ago they're probably not thinking now. Or if you're really struggling to get them to drink, swap with your crewmate. They may have a different method of getting them to drink. You can't bring back a patient not drinking. Okay. It's I think it's built into the human body, because you might be sitting there thinking, well, if they are combative, if they are, they haven't got capacity and they don't want to drink, how can I make them drink? Well, you're not going to make them drink, but we get thirsty because our body is saying we need fluid. We get hungry probably because our body's saying we need fluid. They're no different, whether they interpret those signals hopefully the same. But it becoming a great medic is having that great communication and being able to kind of adjust, to be flexible enough for that patient to encourage them to drink. If your approach isn't working, try a different approach. Okay. And document. But fluid in and fluid out. Fluid out is not easy in a if they've got pads on, but you could kind of estimate how much come out of a pad. Okay, just estimate. So fluid balance, I'm just going to let you read this sheet. Hopefully you can read it all. I'm not going to read it word from word, but basically 52% of the body is made up of fluid in women and 60 in men. Dehydration is only 1% or more loss of body. You're in a state of dehydration. That's pretty shocking, 1%. So it shows you how you need to be all on it. But do you know what? Read that bottom sentence. I'm going to read it out to you because it's that important. The symptoms of dehydration are the beginnings of hypovolemic shock, which, if not corrected, can lead to organ failure and death. All for not having a drink. Make sure you're all over it with the drink. Just going to leave it up a little bit longer just to make sure you're all over it. We used to, just while you're reading it, I'll just tell you another quick story. When I was much younger, I'd done a lot of diving all over. I was lucky enough to do it all over the world, and I can remember my first dive liverboard in Egypt, I think it was, and they held up a 2 litre bottle of Evian. Oh no, sorry, it wasn't. It's a 500 ml bottle of water. It wasn't Evian. Weren't that posh? 500 ml bottle of water. And then we was in Egypt, and the dive guide said, if you are not drinking 6 of these a day, so that's 3 litres of water a day, you will end up poorly. Now, we had to drink more water than normal because when we're underwater breathing air, it's dry air. Now, what oxygen is dried oxygen. So if they're even on oxygen, it's drying you out more. So you need to overcompensate for the water. So when I was diving, it was 3 litres. Without the dry air, even if we weren't diving and we was in the sun, you know, you should be 2 litres a day. Having a 500 ml bottle of water between Spain and here is unacceptable. Okay, so you at least want a litre of fluid at the bare minimum. Okay, bare minimum. So 2 litres should be your goal on a normal patient. So here are reasons why people don't have enough fluid. So the top one is obviously the biggest, right? Refusal to drink because they're worried that you're going to have to change them or they're a burden on you, and obviously they're not a burden. Dementia, Alzheimer's and cognitive impairment. D&V as well, the bottom one, I guess that's a massive one as well, because you know a lot of patients can have D&V when we've collected them. They can be quite poorly, and that's really important we keep their fluids up. So that's why we monitor the patients in and out to provide dehydration or overhydration. Okay, urine colour, right? You don't need to be a scientist. If it's running clear, you know they're drinking well. Right to the other end, if it's brick colour, there's some problems there. And this is the advantage of having a urine catheter fitted. You can see the volume, you can see the colour, and trust me, when you empty the bag, you can smell it too, okay? You can smell a UTI a mile away. Normal urine output is about 1 millikilogram per body per hour range. Okay, so 0.5 to 2 mil per kilogram per hour. Okay, so obviously that's only advantage if you know what the patient's weight is. But it's all down to colour. The darker it is, the more they need to drink. Okay? If you're seeing dark urine, encourage them to drink more. So nutrition and NG feeding, again, nutrition is so important for obviously for life. Okay, we get our energy from food. It's important for healing. Going back to pressure sores as one example, pressure sores, one of the 4 things we need to do is good nutrition. Those of you who haven't done feeding via an NG tube before, you will need to be confident on doing it. So hopefully we would know whether you're going to a patient who is being NG fed. If you haven't, I would do some research on it now, especially if you're going to be clinical lead, because You may end up going to a patient who's not going to be NG fed, but by the time you get to the hospital, they are being NG fed. So this is where you, if you've not done it before and you're not feeling confident, this is where you would ask the nurse in the hospital to explain how it is done. Okay, I'm not going to teach you that now. The very first time I took an NG patient, I think I collected them from King's in London, and I took them all the way back to Greece. By the time I got to Greece, I felt I was an expert. I'd never fed a patient so much. But I think it was it an IT? I don't know. The nurse in the ward, she took 20 minutes out of her day, took me through step by step aseptic technique, how much pressure you apply on the syringe, how much food you give them, how slowly you do it, making sure the patient is upright. She was fantastic, really, really fantastic, and I felt confident ever since. But syringes, right, this is really important. Our syringes we keep, and we should have a selection on board. Now, when you're feeding them via an NG tube, you normally use the bigger syringes. We know that they've got different tips on syringes. Okay, you've got Luolock ones, you've got the purple ones, which are normally for feeding, and you've got soft tip syringes. You may be going out there confident that we've got a load of syringes on board, but they may not fit their end tubes, or their, as in the fittings on the NG feeding system that patient has got. So before you leave that hospital, make sure you've got everything you need for that patient. That's that thorough check of knowing what you've got, knowing what you haven't got, so knowing what you need to collect from the hospital. Okay? Ask me how I know that, because I've been stuck like that before. And I had to divert to a hospital and ask them for some syringes. I didn't run out of syringes again. Trust me, I got back, and I think 300 arrived on Amazon the next day. I think we've been 280 because they went out of date. How do you know if they're dehydrated? Look at the output. What color is it? And yeah, actually, that's a great one to think of mind. We know that if it is dark in color, that they are dehydrated. But yes, we have all taken vitamin tablets, and look at the color of our wee. You know, sometimes it can go glow in the dark. And food and drink does affect color too. Okay. So that's nutrition and NG feeding. So this is we're coming to the end now, and this is a kind of, it's all starting to go pear-shaped, or we are collecting a patient whose choice and the family's choice is to get them back to the UK to be around loved ones in their final moments. Okay, so we would have risk assessed this before you even got out there. You'd know what you're collecting. Now, if a patient says to me, or the family says to me, that, you know, Nana or Granddad or Mum and Dad are at the final stage of life, we want to get them back to the UK, we will respect their wishes and make it happen. We will also inform them that the problems that if they do die on board on these long journeys, so they are aware of the risks. That should hopefully all be done before you even start to leave for this patient. The hospital said the patient's going to die. Can we leave them here? I don't even know what I've written here. Okay, so we have on board every repack pack, we have a respect form on board. Now, before we get to the patient, we should know the patient's wishes, as in DNAR wishes, and the family's wishes. If the family don't know, they normally leave it for crew best decision. Now, this is a little bit of a grey area, and I'm going to tell you why it's a grey area. It's a grey area because we are not in the UK following UK law. They do not have in Europe DNARs. So don't expect to collect a DNAR from a hospital. It doesn't exist. In Spain, if the patient is not for resus, they will write in the notes the patient is palliative. That one line in the notes in Spanish means no resus. I don't quite know what the law is in France, but they don't have generally a DNAR document. So it's important for us to know what the patient's wishes are and what the family's wishes are even before we take on this job, okay? And we will document those wishes, and you will document those wishes on a respect form. So have a good understanding of what the respect form is. Now, normally the respect form is filled out by a doctor or a nurse, normally a doctor, but we will fill it out and sign it, and then when we hand them over to the hospital in the UK, you will just be honest and transparent and say, look, we've collected this patient, this is what the family's wishes were, this is what the patient's wishes were, we've documented, but obviously we're not doctors. So then you will allow them, and in fairness, they will be whipping out a DNAR form quicker than you can say anything. However, if a patient was to deteriorate, we're obviously going to divert. And this is why the News 2 score is so good, okay? If you get them on board and they're a News score of 6, you know, they might go down to 5. Look, we said that they're normally worst first in. But if they end up suddenly deteriorating and going to an 8 or a 9, you know, you're going to be thinking, right, it's time to divert, something's going, or something's changing, and we need to start thinking that, do I want this patient to die on board, or do I want them to die in a hospital environment? And that's a tricky one, because that also depends where you are in Europe. If the patient is deteriorating and you're at Calais, there's that decision to have that, actually, look, if I divert now to hospital in Calais, there's a good chance he's gonna die overnight or die in the next, 4 or 5 hours. Well, yeah, overnight, 4 or 5 hours. Where if we do half hour more and get them into Ashford, the family can be with him in Ashford. So it's a tough choice to do what is right for the patient and for the family. But bear this in mind, most choices are not to die abroad. We have to at all times work in the patient's best interest. This is where patient first, family second, us third, okay? As a clinical team, we will help you make that decision as a clinical team. And that decision on what to do for the best will be made, as I said, clinically, with the patient's best interest at heart, and in talking with the family, so everybody's on the same page. We won't leave that responsibility down to you as the clinician. We will make that all together. This is why that second WhatsApp group is really important, so we can all keep on going, seeing what's going on. What have I written on here anyway? Okay. Now here's the second form, which is in your pack. This, we actually should be filling this a lot more. A lot of patients are, you need to be in hospital for 2 weeks, they're bouncing off the walls, they don't speak any of the lingo, they've been lying in a hospital bed for 7 days, just taking the tablets in the morning, they want to get back. I'll take them back. I'll happily take them back, provided they're not critically ill. But the hospital is saying that they shouldn't be discharged, but the family is self-discharging. That's fine. I'm happy with that agreement, but you need to document it that the patient is going against medical advice. As in, the hospital doctor is saying, no, you shouldn't go. They've got capacity, so they can go, and we'll take them, provided there's no risk as such. Well, there's always risk, but that risk is minimal. So this form is to say that you're happy. It's basically for the patient to say, happy you take me. I know I'm going against medical advice, but I'm happy to go home to the UK for NHS care. as I say, absolutely fine. Document it. Get them to sign it. It's witnessed by your crewmate and fill it in. Okay. That's what that document is on the screen. So, and again, whether we take them or not whether we take them, our action is, do they have capacity? What does the patient want? What does the family want? Are they aware of the risks? Whilst the doctor in the hospital say it's not wise. Oh yeah, okay, so we could just document everything. Most patients are end of life, maybe not imminent. But yeah, but choose not to die abroad. They come home to die in the UK. Oh yeah, and I guess that's the other big thing. I think we've got to take personal views out of this sometimes. I'm not saying that there's a line that we have to go down. There's a very flexible decision process, and it is coming down to what the patient wants, right? If that patient do not want to die abroad and at all costs they want me to get them back to the UK, I want to get them back to the UK. And that's what they're paying me to do, okay? They're paying me to get them back safe and sound in the UK. And as I say, it's not always an easy choice. And to some people, it might be a wrong choice. But that doesn't matter. If the patient's got capacity, it is their choice. And that's what's important here. As I said, we're there to make this joint decision making with you, with the patient, or with the family, okay? It's a tough one. You know what? It happens. I reckon in the 8 or 9 years we've done this, I'm going to guess 2 or 3 patients have died on arrival or the night we're in the country before we've even got them on board. We've never had a patient go into cardiac arrest on board. We've probably diverted 4 or 5 times in a serious condition, as in the patient's gone down fast. We've probably diverted 4 or 5 times as in I think we need to be sure, as in we're worried but not like a drastic decline. So you know, so when you think of those, it's not common, but it happens. We're human beings, right? And we're sick human beings, so you have to expect the unexpected. What if they do die on board? Okay, so it hasn't happened yet. As I said, a patient would normally be starting to deteriorate and we would go straight to A&E. So we support the relative, first of all. Hopefully, before the patient got to this point, everybody should know that the patient was very, very sick. If there's no family on board, don't be posting in the family WhatsApp group that Doris has died. Not very good. If you are very, very, very close to Calais, you are to call the office and we'll make a decision between us. This is a tough conversation if it's in Europe, because if they die abroad, I've put up here, it can take 7 to 10 days, maybe even 3 weeks for the family to get all the paperwork in place for them to have to fly the patient home in the hull of an aircraft. And it's costing them a fortune, and bearing in mind they've already paid out for us to go and get them. So with that in mind, and with the patient in mind, we try to do everything within our power to get them back home with their family and be an advocate for the patient and the family. Always remember dignity in death as well. And the last thing on there, in Spain and Portugal, a lot of the funeral parlours are run by the mafia. So what normally happens when they die in a hospital bed in Spain is the nurse will come over to you to sign a release form, normally within the first 5 minutes, no morning time. Mate, you just sign this piece of paper, we'll get the body released. And what they're doing is they're releasing it to a private funeral contractor where the hospital normally it will earn a bit of bunts from, and they can charge the family up to €3,000 a day. And you've got no choice. You want the body back, this is what you're paying. So never, if you're with a family, never allow them to sign. Call the office. I know people in Spain, British people in Spain, who will help the family even if they don't do the funeral for them. There was one other bit. I think that was it. Okay, that was slide 36 or 36. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. As I said, please give me some feedback below that it was worth it, it wasn't worth it. You may well have a load of questions, and that's the negative of doing it via PowerPoint, because you can't ask me the question. Ask me the question, because I might be able to put a slide in and I can do a voiceover on it. Hope you've enjoyed it. Please, I'll do some more if it works. Do some more PowerPoints for uploading. Have a great day. Thank you very much.